few days ago, I came across a tweet that claimed that a very rich guy had made himself biologically younger. And this thread has had 10,000 retweets. So I thought it might be worth doing a bit of a deep dive to find out what exactly is being claimed here. What does it mean to make yourself biologically younger? And is this strategy, which is known as Bryan Johnson's blueprint, something that all of us should be following? So let's start by taking a look at the tweet. Bryan Johnson sold his company to PayPal for $800 million in 2013. It's a guy with an awful lot of money. And since then, he's been investing millions to reduce aging. In 2021, he reduced his epigenetic age, we'll be coming back to that, by 5.1 years in 7 months, which apparently is a world record, whatever that might mean. So the first question is, what does it even mean to say that he got biologically younger? Well, he had a lot of different medical tests done. And one way that you can measure biological age is to look at your performance in a particular medical test and then compare it to other people across the population of different ages. And if your medical test has about the same value of the average person of a certain age, then you can use that as a measure of your biological age. Let's have a look at some of the examples of tests that he did. This is a diagram from his website, and you can see the age measured on the test before he started his blueprint program in red, and then his age 9 months later in green. And as you can see, all of these ages have gone down. But these mean very, very different things. So starting on the left with the most impressive one, you can see that his NAD levels went down from those typically associated with a 42-year-old to those associated with a 16-year-old, a rather impressive 26-year drop of biological age. So let's start with that one. What is NAD? Well, it's a molecule that's found inside all of our cells and it's essential for life. And its levels seem to go down with age. So what that means is that if you have a higher NAD level, that might be associated with being biologically younger. Now, this is the one in which he's got the most impressive change in biological age, but actually once you understand how he did it, it's not quite so impressive anymore. He takes a supplement called NMN, which is thought to boost your NAD levels. So this does feel a little bit like cheating. If you find something that's got high levels in young people and levels that then decrease with age, then by taking supplements of that thing, you can effectively decrease your biological age. The real question is, what's actually happening biologically as a result of this increase? And unfortunately, there's some controversy in the scientific community. We don't really know whether decreasing NAD with age is a causal part of the aging process, i.e. the reductions of this chemical in your cells go on to cause things like frailty or diseases, the problems that we associate with aging, or whether it's merely correlated, which is, perhaps something like grey hair, where you get more grey hair as you get older, but that grey hair doesn't go on to cause cancer or cause dementia or cause any of these other problems that we associate with being old. It's just related. It's a sort of side effect that shows us what's going on inside the rest of our bodies. And actually, it's even worse than that because it's somewhat controversial in science as to whether NAD levels do decrease with age or not. It depends on what test you do and where you make the measurement. So I assume it goes down by whatever measure he's using, but is this a decrease in biological age? Well, it doesn't feel particularly plausible to me. Another item on his list is a decrease of maximum heart rate. This is the maximum rate at which your heart can beat if you absolutely go all out while you're exercising. And it has got a well-known association with age. You might have heard of the sort of simplified version of this, which is that you can work out your maximum heart rate by taking 220 and subtracting your age, and that's the number of beats per minute. So say you're 40 years old, then 220 minus 40 would be 180 beats per minute. So does that correspond to a reduction in his biological age? I don't think we really know. Although maximum heart rate does seem to go down with age, and that 220 minus how old you are thing is probably a reasonable ballpark, there's quite a lot of variability between individuals of the same age, and we don't really know what explains it. It doesn't seem to be affected by fitness level, for example. And actually, if you go onto his website and read the footnote associated with his decrease in maximum heart rate, it says, this is exciting because we couldn't get max HR to budge for over 12 months, and neither could we find any research showing that max HR increase was possible, which means we don't really know whether it's possible to increase your maximum heart rate, and we certainly don't know what it means if you did. Perhaps the most interesting of these measurements from an aging biology perspective are the epigenetic clocks. This is the most accurate way that scientists have come up with so far to measure how biologically old we are. And the way it works is you take somebody's DNA, and all over that DNA are these chemical decorations. They're called epigenetic marks, and they control which bits of the DNA are used in which cells at which times. And scientists have noticed that as you age, there are changes to the epigenetic patterns on your DNA, and we can use this to create, slightly unnervingly accurate epigenetic clocks. If you take a sample of someone's blood, you can run one of these epigenetic clocks and work out how old they are to within 3 or 4 years. And this inaccuracy led scientists to ask perhaps an obvious question. What does it mean if your epigenetic age is older than your chronological age, i.e. how many candles there are on your birthday cake. Well, it seems as though people with what's called epigenetic age acceleration are more likely to die and more at risk of age-related diseases than people with their epigenetic age matching their chronological age, or even better, one that's younger. And this guy, of course, not wanting to be outdone, has measured his epigenetic age in multiple different ways. So let's try and make sense of that wall of numbers, and we'll start by looking at just the top 3 tests. These are Horvath 1, Horvath 2, and Hannum. And you can see, if you take averages of those columns, they go from sort of 49 or 50 years old down to 43 and a little bit years old, which means a reduction in biological age of something like 6 or 7 years. Now, what does that mean? Well, those 3 clocks aren't designed to measure aging per se. They were originally created so that if you get, say, a sample of someone's blood, you can work out how chronologically old they are. I guess sort of step 1 in working out whether this was a useful way to measure biological age. And as I mentioned, they've got an uncertainty of about 3 or 4 years, and we don't entirely know what causes that uncertainty. Is it because the very fittest people have the lowest biological ages? Is there some genetic component? Does it just vary randomly from measurement to measurement? There certainly seems to be a component of that. So it really doesn't seem that wild to me that this guy who's actually 45 years old can go from a little bit above his chronological age to a little bit below with a 6-month program of intense diet and exercise interventions. So let's move on to the 4th row, and this one's a bit more interesting. This is an epigenetic clock called pheno-age, and it's the only one of these 4 clocks that was designed specifically to look for things like risk of disease and risk of death. And the results here are rather less impressive. Depending on whether you look at the April or November column, his biological age went down by either a few months or maybe almost a year. So those are much smaller than the reductions in the other epigenetic clocks, and this is the one that's probably more clinically relevant. What we don't know is if you do something like diet or exercise or take a pill or a supplement or a drug and reduce your personal epigenetic age or maybe slow the rate at which it's increasing, we don't really know what that means yet, and work is ongoing. This is a really promising field, a really exciting way that we might be able to understand your sort of general picture of your health and a general picture of your aging. We just haven't got the data to know exactly what these numbers mean yet. So, some of the sketchier measures of biological age seem to have got a lot better. Some of the more robust ones seem to have only got a little bit better. But I guess the good news for him is that they're all moving in the right direction. Let's have a look at what the blueprint actually involves. Step 1 is eat healthy. Let's start by looking at the general recommendations before we dig into the details. 3 meals daily, super veggie, nutty pudding, and a third that varies and consists of vegetables, nuts, seeds, and berries. Now, without really knowing any details of this diet, I think most of us could benefit from eating more vegetables and more nuts. So broadly, this is probably going to be good for your health, no matter exactly what you do with it. Upon waking, the green giant. Let's see what this involves. Well, there's some water. That's not going to kill you. But then the rest of the ingredients are slightly more interesting. So, for example, there's spermidine. Now, this is a genuinely potentially exciting anti-aging supplement, but the evidence is still very much coming in. If you want to know a bit more about that, you might enjoy this interview I did with Russell Howard on exactly this subject. And actually, spermidine, it's something that's found in all kinds of normal, natural food products, things like mushrooms and cheddar cheese and various other places in our diets. This is a supplement that's probably not going to kill you, and we don't really know whether it's going to be a benefit from an aging perspective. And actually, this is a really common theme of many of the things, not only on this list, but in the whole world of sort of this biohacking approach to trying to improve your health. Things like collagen peptides, that's basically broken down bits of protein. There are theories as to how they might improve the collagen in your skin and in other parts of your body. And eating them probably isn't going to do you any serious harm. Then there's things like cinnamon and flavonols, olive oil, delicious. Again, none of these things are going to kill you. Are they really going to have a significant benefit on your health? Who can say? And the research is very much still coming in. And then this super veggie thing, it's got lentils and broccoli and cauliflower and mushrooms. Mushrooms contain spermidine again, by the way. These are all good things to eat, and I'm sure that he's improving his health by eating this, rather than burger and fries and milkshake. But it's very hard to say whether this specific prescription is what it is that's going to make you live healthily into your hundreds or something. Okay, so that's enough highly specific food recommendations. Step 2 is supplements. Bryan takes about 25 pills every day. As you go down this list, obviously we could spend the next couple of days talking about not just what's on this list, but the doses that he's chosen, because that's really important as to the effect you might expect as well. But basically, the same kind of story applies. Now, just to be clear, this isn't medical advice. I've not been through every single one of these carefully and checked them. But these things probably, again, aren't going to kill you. Are they going to be of benefit? Well, some of them are talked about in a positive way as potential anti-aging therapeutics, but for most of them, the evidence just isn't in. But perhaps the two most exciting, and that should very much be in quotation marks, things on this list are a couple of actual drugs. So, not just dietary supplements, not just things that you might naturally find in various quantities in food, but there's metformin that he takes upon waking, and he also takes with dinner. And there's also rapamycin, which is something that's taken bi-weekly, apparently. And if you've read my book, Ageless, or if you're following anything about sort of health and longevity online, these won't be a surprise to you. These are drugs that are often talked about in the context of improving our health as we get older. If I was 45, like Bryan, I think I'd probably wait for some of the scientific evidence to come in. For example, with metformin, there's a huge randomized trial called TAME, which hopefully is going to finally get underway soon. And that's going to take about 3,000 people between the ages of 60 and 80, and it's going to give them metformin, and it's going to see if metformin, which is normally prescribed as a diabetes drug, is able to slow down the whole of the aging process. So given that we're going to potentially have the answer within 5 years, I think I'd definitely sit and wait rather than taking it now speculatively. And this is doubly true of rapamycin, a drug that we know is incredibly effective at slowing down the aging process in mice, and we just don't know how effective it's going to be in people yet. Now, if I was a human thinking about taking this stuff, which I guess I am, then I'd be happy just to wait for a few more years to see what the evidence actually says. And actually, the mouse studies give us a note of optimism here, because we've noticed that you can actually give rapamycin very late in a mouse life, and it can still have an effect of prolonging the healthy lifespan of those mice. You don't need to start taking it as a teenager or as a young adult to experience that maximum benefit, hopefully. So again, it's probably better to watch and wait rather than have it twice a week with your breakfast. Okay, step 3. Track progress. And I really like this one. Bryan has had hundreds of measurements taken, and we've already talked about a few of those. But what this guy says is that some are standard, such as biofluids and fitness scores. Some are advanced, such as MRI and ultrasound. Standard. Biofluids. Now, I'm a biologist. I've written a book on the biology of aging. My wife is a doctor. I've literally never heard the word biofluids before. I guess he's talking about blood tests and urine tests and that sort of thing. But this is just a needless scientification of what are probably fairly standard medical tests. And I really enjoyed some are advanced, such as ultrasound. Ultrasound is the most basic kind of medical imaging you can do. Here in Germany, GPs use it in their practices. This is not some, highfalutin, hyper-advanced, computer-aided AI test. And I've never even heard of a way that you can use ultrasound to measure biological age, so I just don't really know what this guy's talking about here. And then we come to the clincher. This tweet is a very long way down the thread, and it reads, "But the blueprint is more than food and supplements. It's also a combination of daily exercise, great sleep, and a skincare routine." So we've come through this enormous thread of complicated sciencey sounding words to find out that in order to be healthy, you have to eat well, get some exercise, sleep well, and, put on some moisturizer. Absolutely mind-blowing. Well worth 10,000 retweets. Who is Max Hurton? Well, if we click through, according to his Twitter bio, he is founder of Australia's #1 rated marketing agency. And I really think this gets to the nub of this entire health, wellness, biohacking, fad diet, biological age measuring situation that we find ourselves in at the moment. It's all about marketing rather than health. Because there are these promising measures of biological age, and there are things that you can do to improve your health. But the way that you get 10,000 retweets isn't by saying, eat well, exercise, and get a bit of sleep. It's by giving highly specific, scientific-sounding, spuriously precise advice, making your followers feel like they're getting some kind of exclusive insight that isn't available anywhere else. I think this throws up two challenges for those of us trying to communicate aging biology. The first problem is that the basic evidence-based health advice of eating well, getting plenty of exercise, and getting plenty of sleep, well, those are just less sexy than these incredibly precise threads going through detailed plans for diets and measurements you can take to optimize your health. And also, paradoxically, by making things more complicated, they can oversimplify, because it can sound like rather than doing these really important things like quitting smoking, instead you can just have an olive oil smoothie for breakfast, and that will solve all of your health problems. The second challenge is that this diverts attention and resources and maybe even funding away from more serious parts of aging biology. I think this is a hugely exciting field. It's even got the potential to be revolutionary, because as we develop the first true anti-aging treatments that target aspects of the aging process itself, we're going to have medicines that could be preventative of not just individual diseases, but maybe the whole gamut of age-related changes. You know, the cancer, the heart disease, the dementia, but also the frailty, the wrinkles, the grey hair, the whole thing being caused by these same aging processes means we've got a hugely exciting opportunity to change the way that we practice medicine and make everybody around the world happier and healthier, living longer and better lives. But if we get distracted and end up thinking that aging biology is just about a bunch of rich dudes taking hundreds of supplements, doing hundreds of tests to try and biohack their way to immortality, well, that just sells this whole field short. And I really think it's far too important for us to do that. That was a lot of tweets, so if you're still watching, thank you so much for sticking with me through all of that. I just thought it was a really fascinating example of the way in which aging biology is starting to percolate out into the popular consciousness. And although at first sight it's easy to be cynical and just say, that thread is a whole load of nonsense, actually, if you dig into the science behind it, there's some really interesting stuff in there. And actually, some of it could end up being quite promising. We just don't have the evidence for it yet. Right, I'm off to eat a massive bowl of nuts covered in spermidine. Wait, that sounded weird.